And the Bucs hope that this will be their first victory ever.
We have a great area, growing area. In Tampa, St. Petersburg, Clearwater, Sarasota, Bradenton, Lakeland, and Winter Haven, and even Wauchula. Over 2 million fans. And it's the fastest growing area in the United States.
After, ladies and gentlemen, live from Tampa Stadium. For the first time ever in a regular season, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers entered the stadium with numbers in both the win and loss columns. The Buccaneers came onto the field to a wild standing ovation from the some 60,000-plus fans at Tampa Stadium. They did not introduce any players individually. The PA announcer said, ladies and gentlemen, your Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Welcome to San Diego, California, Super Bowl 37. It is Tampa Bay versus the Oakland Raiders. Third down, 18, dropping Gannon, looking, throws up to the head, intercepted at the 40, Derek Brooks 30, Brooks to the 25, he's got Derek Brooks all the way, there it is, the dagger's in, we're going to win the Super Bowl.
Tom Brady signing with the Tampa Bay Bucs tomorrow. Holy hell.
Everyone always says, why the Bucs, man? Why do you choose the Bucs? And it was a no-brainer.
Brady has all kinds of time, throws toward the end zone. It is a caught ball. Touchdown, Tampa Bay, Mike Evans. 8 seconds, 7 seconds. Brady to throw, throws a deep pass downfield. Got Scotty Miller in the open, makes the catch. Touchdown, Tampa Bay. Super Bowl 55 will be underway at Raymond James Stadium. Here's the snap out of the gun. Play action fake pass to Gronkowski. He's going to score a touchdown. Touchdown, Tampa Bay. Holy guacamole. Bucs are the Super Bowl champs. They can't stop the clock. And there the cannons go. Fire them. Keep on firing them. Keep on firing them.
On 3rd and 3, they protect Brady. Scans the field and lets it fly. It's Evans. It's a touchdown.
This is the Big Nasty. Yeah, Big Nasty Hall of Fame Tampa Bay Buccaneer fan, baby.
This is Mike Allstott, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and you're listening to the Cannon Fire Podcast.
Cannon Fire Podcast, brother. You ain't listening, and you're missing out. Woo!
And there the cannons go. Fire them. Keep on firing them. Keep on firing them.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to a brand new edition of the Cannon Fire Podcast. It is July 12th, 2022. It has been, a month and a half since we have talked to you guys. I feel like the last 5 or 6 podcasts that we've done, we open things up and we're like, all right, we're getting back in the groove of things. We got stuff to talk about, and then the entire month of June happens. We had OTAs. The last time we had talked to you guys, the Buccaneers added some defensive line help with Akeem Hicks. Since then, we've had a couple of things happen, but honestly, between life getting in the way and, the lack of a whole lot of news, we haven't had a whole lot to talk about. But we are here today to catch you up because, as I mentioned, we are a little bit into the month of July, which means we are less than 3 weeks away from preseason football. Training camp starts in less than a month. I think 2 weeks, if I'm not mistaken. So it is safe to say, officially, and we mean it this time, we're back. CFP is back. We're going to be bringing you content. We are getting ready for the 2022 Tampa Bay Buccaneers football season with Tom Brady back at the helm for year 23. But in the meantime, welcome back to the podcast. I'm your host, as always, Rhett Matthew, joined alongside me, my good buddy and co-host, the Philly Bucs fan himself from BucsNation.com, Mr. Evan Wanish. God, dude, I feel like it's been forever since I have talked to you.
Yeah, it's we were talking earlier today, and you were like, man, it feels like we haven't talked in like a year. It's been a while, and it's good to be back into the swing of things. We've always kind of taken June pretty much as that 1 month where maybe we put out a show or two, maybe we don't. this year we didn't. So, and even there was some news, and trust me, we wanted to do this sooner than July 12th. It's just, stuff gets in the way, and scheduling, and just, it happens, right? It happens. So we've been wanting to do this for a while. We haven't been ignoring you guys, trust me. And we're excited to, be back into the swing of things, and get back to not necessarily our normal regular season schedule, but more of a schedule.
Yeah, I think once a week, we can promise the people one podcast a week, even if there isn't a ton of headline breaking news. We can still find some good Red and Pewter stuff to talk about. But before we dive into what we have missed talking about the past month and a half, we do have to carry on one of the newest segments on the show. We started this and then never ever brought it up again because we didn't do a show for almost 2 months. But last time we did a show, it was May. It is now July, which means not only do we have one flip of the calendar page, we have 2 of them today. So the month of May, we looked at Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Ali Marpet over my right shoulder. We have got 2 flips of the calendar. I don't know the next time that this is going to happen here on the show. You might have to wait a full calendar year, pun intended, but here we go. All right. I would be remiss if we didn't recognize who is on June here, but Ali Marpet, Buccaneers legend, on May. We say so long. Flip the page. We admire Tampa Bay Buccaneers legend and current tight end.
That's pretty ironic, yeah.
Cameron Brate. Unfortunately, he's going to get passed right the hell over because we got to get to the month of July. But hold on, let me get Cam looking good up here. These push pins can be a bitch. Ugh. All right.
If you're listening on audio right now, you're missing out.
Yeah, I know. All right, here we go. The month of July, we go.
There we go.
Don't make a scene. It's just Jamel Dean. And
at first, I thought that was Cyril Grayson. I was like, man, how do you make a calendar?
So you know what? I'm gonna be honest. I guess we should take a minute to talk about Mr. July here, Jamel Dean. Mr. July, Jamel Dean. Don't make a scene. We're going to get to some news. Trust me, we're going to get to everything that we missed. But I just want to say really quickly as we recognize this month's cover athlete, I don't hate Jamel Dean. I don't know why he gets dragged the way that he does. Do you have any thoughts, Evan, on Jamel Dean and maybe expectations for him this year? Because a lot of people think he shouldn't even be on an NFL roster for some reason.
Yeah, I think the main reason why he's so frustrating to a lot of people is because 1 minute he can seemingly be a good number 2 cornerback, like a legit number 2 corner in the NFL. And then the next minute, he tends to give up a lot of bigger plays. When he gives up plays, they're normally plays that you remember because they're bigger plays, they're splash plays. So that I think is part of the frustration with him. And it's also because he takes chances. He's not, I wouldn't label him as a ball hawk, but he does like to take chances on a lot of routes and stuff. And I think that's what burns him sometimes. But, as far as him coming into this season, I think he could be a real breakout player. And I think I had him. I had an article on Bucs Nation about a month ago about breakout players for this team. And I believe Jamel Dean was one of the names on there. I think, it's a contract year for him. So he's going to be playing for a little bit of money. I think we could see a pretty big year from Jamel Dean. And if Carlton Davis keeps up his production on the one side, right, that we know that he can do, if Jamel Dean can take that next step, that would be a huge boost for the defense. Sean Murphy Bunting is one thing, but Jamel Dean, who's going to be on the field much more than Murphy Bunting is and playing against heavier competition, I think if Dean's able to make that next step, I think it would go a long ways in, not only the future for Tampa Bay, but also the present, that I think it makes this defense much more better if you have more than one reliable corner.
And when we talk about the evolution of not only the Bucs secondaries, but like the individuals playing in that secondary, the context that's most important to me is all of the injuries that they had to go through last year, right? I mean, you're signing guys like Richard Sherman to come in and help this team. And even Richard Sherman had some things to say about Tampa Bay on his way out, because I think he just had to deal with Amazon, right? Or he got an analyst gig?
I think, he's heading to Amazon for their their Thursday Night Football stuff.
Yeah, so on his way out, he happened to mention that, as long as Amazon doesn't sign him and expect him to play less than a week after learning and getting there and getting warmed up or whatever, he had said some passive-aggressive BS on his way out. But it speaks to the situation that the secondary was in last year. So I feel like when you're missing a guy like SMB for the first half of the entire season and then not even starting your starting backfield until the playoffs, like, it's going to be hard for guys to really grow and get ahead of themselves when you're already digging yourself out of a hole due to the injuries. But we talked about the other cover athlete for last month on the Bucs calendar, and that is tight end 1 baby, Cameron Brate, rocking the mustache. I'm excited to see what he can do this year. But the bigger elephant in the room is the departure of Rob Gronkowski, because if I'm not mistaken, on the last podcast we did, we kind of kept brushing over Gronk because everybody said, he'll be back. And then the official announcement comes out that he's retiring, and everyone is still kind of like, he'll be back. Time has passed. It's been a little over 2 weeks, I think, since Gronk officially announced his retirement. He was asked today about a possible return with Tampa Bay, especially if Tom Brady picks up the phone and calls him, and he says, no, man, I am done with football. He's going to go ahead and focus on his business ventures, quote unquote. You're going to see him on twice as many commercials at the end of every week now. But what do you think for Gronk? Do you think he's really pulling our legs here? Is it because he doesn't want to go to training camp, so he's going to kind of, pull a Tom Brady and stay retired for 40 days until his number is called? Or, and I'm kind of starting to lean this way, do you think he really is done? Because, I mean, let's face it, he was having a nice little, comeback tour this last 2 seasons with 2020 and 2021. We really saw him start to hit a stride before he got injured in 2021. But the injury was a little bit more serious than we thought. Yeah. And that's why, in my personal opinion, I think he really is done. But how do you feel about 87?
I think he's lying. I really do. I don't think it's going to be the start of the year. I don't think it's just a training camp thing. But I could see this being like an Antonio Brown situation. Maybe do the Bucs have a loss where maybe and injuries can happen at any point? Does Cameron Brate go down? Does Cade Otton go down? Cade Otton's dealing with an injury right now that kept him out of rookie camp. They're hopeful that he's ready for training camp, but I think it could be like an Antonio Brown thing. Week 6, week 7. I think you talk about. I think when it's easy for him to say that right now. There's no football going on, and there's no football played by anybody right now. I think once he sees football being played, I think you get that itch. And I mean, 20 minutes after he announces his retirement, his agent comes out and says, I wouldn't be surprised if he came out if Tom answered, called him. Like, come on.
Yeah, it really seems like that's the general take with most of these guys who come out and state an opinion. I mean, there's other NFL GMs that are like, he's not gonna go the whole calendar year without playing another game of football, especially if Tom needs his help.
Derek Brooks said a few days ago he didn't think that Gronkowski's staying retired. I don't think Gronkowski's staying retired. I do think he won't be at the start of the year, but I do think at the end of the season he will be on the Bucs roster. I just do. He's living the life right now. I think it's the summertime. The fall is going to come. The weather's going to get a little bit worse. And, obviously depending on where he's at, but still, it's not going to be all sunny and 90 degrees every day, and nice weather. And I think once football season comes, I just have a feeling that itch is going to be too much. And I have a feeling his old buddy is going to give him a call and say, hey, how do you feel about playing the final 7-8 games here? And I just think that that's what's going to happen. I really do.
I would really, really like to hold out hope that we see him suit up again. I mean, Tampa Bay Buccaneers legend, Rob Gronkowski. I'd love to see him in this offense with Tom Brady again. A lot of people have alluded to this probably being Tom's final year. We don't entirely know for sure, but it is kind of hard to imagine that without Rob Gronkowski there, especially because he was lured to come out of retirement in the first place to go do his thing with TB12. If anybody in that locker room wants another Super Bowl, it's Tom Brady. There was a stat that came out just recently. Tom Brady is more likely to take his team to a championship game than any quarterback is to complete a pass. I think it was like a 73 or a 74% chance that basically out of all of his seasons played, Tom Brady has ended up in a championship game of some sort. So I'm not saying the chances help or hurt the Bucs here, but I feel like if they're going to be a Super Bowl contender, it's going to be even more so possible with a guy like Rob Gronkowski. He knows that. Tom Brady knows that. I don't know, dude. Like, if he miss...
Gronk's girlfriend said Gronkowski was joking a few months ago that like Gronk's girlfriend wanted him to go back. Like, right. I don't know.
I don't know, man. The only reason I'm skeptical is because of the injury. If he didn't miss, if he didn't miss more time than we thought he was going to, because I remember that was kind of a week by week thing. Like, hey, when's Gronk going to be back? All right. You know, it's okay that this injury lasted a week or two longer than we expected it to, but that 2 weeks turned into 3, turned into 4. We didn't get him back.
And then he came back early against New Orleans and played a little bit and then missed the game versus Washington and then played versus New York. Yeah, right. I get it.
Yeah, I mean, this is a guy who has struggled with those types of nagging injuries throughout his entire career. Like, I can totally see him just not want to do that anymore. Yeah. Like just being tired of it. You know, when you play football, and especially when you're playing football on a team that's a contender and you're making deep playoff runs, I know this saying applies to hockey a little bit more, but like, you know, by the end of the year, if you're not hurt, you haven't been playing. And right. Gronk is a guy who was out there playing. He's a blocking tight end, baby. And even though he was making some incredible catches during his time here, he was blocking his ass off. And that a lot of that responsibility is going to fall on the shoulders of Cam Brate. But I don't know. I think Gronk may be done. Obviously,
you want to talk about playing games and stuff, right? And like his body and everything. I'm just saying it's much easier to ask him to play 10 games than it is to play a full 17 and then the playoffs.
That is true.
I'm just saying he doesn't have to go through a training camp in the 100-degree Florida heat. He doesn't have to play in any preseason games. He doesn't have to play in the first, 7, 8, 9 regular season games. I just have a feeling that could I be wrong? Sure. Well, why not? But I just have a feeling that we are going to see him once more.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the rest of that tight end room because, obviously a lot of people look at this offense now and they see a glaring hole at the tight end position, depending on your opinion of Cam Brate. Some of the people who haven't seen Cam work with a guy like Jameis Winston under center, their expectations aren't as high for him. But regardless, he is a veteran tight end, one of the longer tenured guys on this offense. Let's talk about maybe some of the responsibilities a guy like Cam is going to pick back up. Should we definitely higher our expectations for him this year? Or do you think that there are still free agent options available at tight end that could kind of take the load off and keep Cam in a similar role that he's been in these past few seasons?
Yeah, he's only getting up there in age. And he already wasn't like the most athletic player in the world to begin with. So as you get older, that will deteriorate. And I think we've already seen that a little bit. Obviously, OJ Howard's not here anymore. I do wonder if the Bucs knew that Gronkowski was, if Gronkowski retired a day after the season ended, I wonder if the Bucs would have made an effort to bring back Howard and try and make it work. I don't know if they would, but I just wonder, if maybe they would have made a bit more of an effort to bring him back.
And even with a guy like OJ Howard, I would be remiss if we didn't mention this because there's probably going to be a few people watching who were like, man, I bet the Bucs feel real stupid about not keeping OJ. And yeah, hindsight's always 20/20, but let's not forget the situation that OJ was in where he really can't put together a full season. And it's one of those things where like, yeah, you can hang on to him because the upside is there, but it's incredibly high risk, high reward with a guy like OJ Howard, who all the camp reports said wasn't having the greatest time in Buffalo either. So it'll be interesting to see how he fits in up there.
Yeah, it's obviously it's still way early, but as far as Cam goes, I personally would like to see them sign if Gronkowski's not coming back, and this could be I think this could be a big sign if they go into the season with Cameron Brate and Kate Otten and let's say O'Keefe as their 3. that to me is a sign that Gronkowski's coming back. Like, to me, that's just a sign that at some point he'll be back. Now, if they sign a free agent, like, I'm going to list off some names here. I have an article up on Bucks Nation talking about so going in depth on these names, but Kyle Rudolph is still available. He's a free agent. Eric Ebron is a free agent. My favorite personally is a player that many Bucks fans should actually be familiar with.
Buccaneers legend.
Technically Buccaneers legend.
Yeah, Buccaneers legend.
That's
helped hand deliver one of our biggest playoff wins in franchise history.
We don't know how that game would have gone. So and that's former New Orleans Saints tight end Jared Cook. There's also another former New Orleans Saints tight end, Jimmy Graham. We'll get into him a little bit later, but Jared Cook would probably be my preference. Now, he is the oldest of the bunch. I believe he's around 35 years old, but if you look at the numbers...
I didn't realize he was that old.
Yeah, if you look at the numbers, though, he's not elite by any means, but he's still productive. Like, he's still a productive player. Even last year in Los Angeles with the Chargers, he was productive. And yeah, I mean, it would be so funny because New Orleans fans like literally hate Jared Cook because they think if that fumble never happens, and maybe they're right, who knows? You never know. Football is a game of what ifs. They think if that fumble never happens, that the Saints win that game. Who knows? Maybe they do.
You took the words right out of my mouth. I don't know if he's still hanging out with us in the live chat, but Hoodie Jube is a Saints YouTuber. He does some live streams, some podcast stuff like that. We've talked to him in the past, but you hit the nail on the head. It seems like you ask any New Orleans fan at all about that playoff game. Either one, it doesn't,
one guy.
Either one, it doesn't count, or two, it is just on Jared Cook. Nothing else happened in that game. Yeah. Drew Brees did not throw a pick six. He didn't throw 3 interceptions. None of that happened. It was just Jared Cook. Otherwise, that game would have been won by New Orleans, but thank God Jared Cook did what he did, and we can sit here and think about Tom Brady coming back for another season, because I don't know. I think if Tom goes 0-2 in his first 2 years in Tampa Bay looking for a Super Bowl, I don't know if he's here right now.
I don't know. But, Jared Cook would be a good one. And then Jimmy Graham's obviously the other one. He was with Chicago. He's just, his body, I think, just cooked. Like, I just don't think he offers you much anymore. I agree. Like, I mean, sure, as like a depth piece, he's better than O'Keefe, sure. But like, he's not going to offer you a ton as a receiver anymore. Like, he's not that player. Like, he's not even the guy he was like after he got traded from New Orleans to Seattle. Like, he's not even the guy he was in Seattle. But, it would be fun to have a buck killer, on this team, because he tortured them in the early 2010s. Every time they played him, it wasn't really like Marquez Colston or anybody. It was Jimmy Graham for the most part. So, that would be fun. But at the same time, like, as far as best football fit, I think Jared Cook would probably be your best option. If you're looking to replace him with a veteran, you could decide to roll with Cameron Brate. If Cade Otton, I think it may depend on Cade Otton. If Cade Otton shows you in training camp that he can do this and he looks good in the preseason, maybe you don't go out and sign a veteran tight end, right? Because the other thing that we haven't talked about yet, Gronkowski retired. That means he doesn't need a new contract. So they have around $12 million in cap space. They can add 1 or 2 pieces if they want to that are free agents right now.
This seems like an inevitable question, but I have seen people asking. I don't know for sure myself. Has there been official paperwork filed for Gronk's retirement yet? Because you normally do hear about that too.
I do not believe so. I don't believe so. Now, I mean, sometimes it can take a few weeks. Sometimes it can take a few months. But I don't, as far as the knowledge I have right now, I don't believe there's been anything yet. So I don't believe so, but they obviously things can change. And I mean, he could have, it's not out right now.
Well, my closing statement on the tight end room before we move on, I wouldn't be shocked if they go out and try and add somebody. I think the goal in making another signing is finding someone to not necessarily compliment Cam Brate, but just do the job a little bit better than he can. Give you a little more production.
Not the blocker, not even half the blocker Gronkowski is. That's where their run game may hurt there. That's
right. I've heard O'Keefe is a dog, but I can't imagine he's going to be on the field much more than guys like Cam Brate and Cade Otton, if that's the room you roll out in. But when you look at what they've put on the field these last few years, tight ends aren't as big of a deal as they used to be in like a dirt cutter kind of offense, but it still doesn't really feel complete if you're rolling as Cam Brate as your tight end one. With all due respect to Big Bam Cam, the Buccaneers OG on that offense, it's still just kind of one of those things where I would like them to add another piece. And I think a lot of people can agree and would feel comfortable if they add another piece.
You're in, like you said, Tom Brady's likely final season, and you're a legit Super Bowl contender. You should be aiming higher than Cameron Brate. He's a nice player, but you should still be aiming higher.
Yeah. Well, we talked about Jared Cook. We talked about Jimmy Graham, and we labeled him a Buck killer. Speaking of Bucks killers, our good buddy, it's time for our in memoriam section of the show. Our good buddy, the People's Champ, Bradley Pinion.
The organization basically killed him. It's not,
Bradley Pinion is no longer with us, folks. He did not die.
No. Luckily,
he did not die.
Thankfully,
he may as well be dead to us because he left us, and he went and signed with Atlanta. So
you know what? If he wants to come on the show as a member of the Falcons, he still has an open invitation. We can have a conversation after the Bucs beat the Falcons by 30 during the regular season. We can ask him about some of his punts at that. We can have him on the show.
I sent him a DM after the deal with Atlanta came out, and I said, with all due respect, man, I'm happy for you. I'm always rooting for you, but hey, at least you're going to get a hell of a lot more playing time now, right? I mean,
did you actually say that?
No, I didn't. I wanted to. I wanted to so bad. No, I told him I was always rooting for him, and it's going to be go Bucks. But yeah, we get to see our former punter.
Did he respond?
Yeah. He liked it, and he said, "Thanks, man." But yeah, Bradley Pinion, forever a friend of the show, except for twice a year now. So
yeah, clap it up one last time.
Clap it up, the People's Champ, man.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
At the end of the day, believe it or not, Evan, we are entering, if I'm not mistaken, this is going to be our 6th year of coverage on the Cannon Fire podcast.
We're getting old.
Yeah, kind of. It is a little wild when you think about it. And we've had a couple of players interact with us, but Bradley Pinion is really the kind of guy who always gave us the time of day.
Interacted the most. Yeah. There hasn't been a play, at least currently playing in the NFL. There hasn't been a player that's interacted with us as much as Bradley Pinion.
And now that he is no longer on the team, I can be honest, and I referred to him as a butt killer because that playoff performance, that was rough.
Yeah.
That was rough, man.
I mean, and that's what we liked about him too. He always understood, that we were going to come on here, and if he sucked, we were going to say he sucked, it is what it is. And he understood that. I do think he got a little bit too much hate. Now, obviously I am a little bit biased, but yeah, that play, you can't put 2 kickoffs out of bounds to put the team at the 40. You can't do it. Once in a game is bad. Twice in a game is unacceptable.
And then the cherry on top, have it all happen in a playoff game.
Yeah,
that's the shit
in a playoff game that you lost. So
that's
what happens? What happens if you don't put them out of bounds?
That's a preseason mistake where everybody sees it and they get upset, but they're like, that's what the preseason's for. If it happens in the regular season, it's frustrating, but if you win the game and that's not the sole reason you lost, make sure it's fixed by the playoffs. But when it is the final game of your season,
it happens twice.
And the Bucs were in the situation that they were, and it happens twice. I think that was the nail in the coffin for the good old People's Champ. But
and another thing where they saved cap space. So I mean, I said, I keep coming back to, and I hate to keep plugging my articles, but a lot of our talking points I've written articles about. I wrote an article about, I think 2 weeks ago, about how the Bucs should not be done adding to this roster. And we talked about this, I believe, on our last episode after they signed Akeem Hicks. We were like, they shouldn't be done. And we listed off some names, but they have cap space now. And that's another move that they made to have cap space. So obviously it goes without saying, rookie punter Jake Camarda from Georgia, their 4th round pick or 5th round pick, I forget. It's been a while.
I want to say fifth.
I want to say 4th. I want to say it's the 4th round pick.
I'll look real quick. Finish that.
Okay. He has, obviously we knew this, but he has won the job, obviously. So it's exciting. Hey, I mean, Jake, if you want to continue the trend, you have an open invitation. I mean, we could be the Punters podcast, basically. You have an open invitation on CFP anytime. Just let us know.
Pick 133, round 4.
Round 4, yeah. So, I mean, you're not drafting a punter in the 4th round and cutting him. So we knew he had won the job at that point, but now it is official. Like, he is the guy. So real quick, just getting – because we're on the topic of special teams, and you don't talk about that a ton. I'm interested to see the training camp battle between Jose Borregales and Ryan Suckup. I made an article about this a long time ago, actually, about like it's an underrated battle. Like, yeah. I think it's a legit battle.
Not a lot of people are talking about it, like you said, but yeah, I think it is a legit battle as well, because the Bucs kept Borregales around for a reason. You know what I mean? Like they made sure every single week.
There was real concern that when they waived him at the end of the preseason last year,
team
that he was going to get gone, and they were really glad that he wasn't.
Yeah, I'm excited to see that, because if we've heard anything, it's that the kid has a hell of a leg. He was putting on in camp last year. I think he even got the better of Suckup during a couple of the kickoffs. So we'll have to see what happens. Training camp just a few short weeks away. But yeah, another underrated battle as we, kind of shift our focus towards the countdown to Buccaneers training camp and some of those position battles that are at stake.
And that's another move where it would save them money. So if they wanted to go out and sign a free agent or two that's still out there, a lot of good free agents out there still. If they wanted to go out and sign somebody, that is another way to save money. So I do think that's going to be like, it's not going to be like Suckup's cut before camp. Like, that's going to be a legit battle. I think both of them are going to get a fair shot, but I would keep my eye on that. And I would keep an eye on, the press and stuff, what they're writing, what they're tweeting about. Was Borregales 2 for 4 and Suckup was 4 for 4? Was Suckup 2 for 4 and he missed one from 50, but Borregales hit one from 55 and he was 4 for 5? I would just keep an eye on those things, and obviously the preseason as well, because I do think there is a legit competition. It's not like last year where they said, "Oh, it's a competition." I didn't really believe that. Ryan Suckup had just signed an extension. It wasn't a competition. I think this year, though, it really could be.
Hey, so I know that we are talking about Buccaneers position battles, and we'll wrap up the show. We'll talk about that, but there's some stuff happening around the NFC South. Nothing that's going to shake up the division title picture at the end of the year. I still think it's either going to be
maybe the entertainment, though.
Yeah. I think it'll make the division a little bit funner to watch. But when you talk about competition, not only with Tampa Bay but other teams in the NFC South, the Carolina Panthers went out and they got their guy, apparently. Baker Mayfield, the disgruntled Cleveland quarterback, ends up in Carolina. He'll be wearing number 6, and he will see Tom Brady and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers defense twice a year. And Matt Rule came out and said that it's pretty much an open battle between Sam Darnold and Baker Mayfield for that starting spot. I think most people assume Baker is going to get the spot, and yeah, I do too. You've already rolled the dice with Darnold. You got a year of him under your belt. I don't think he's going to give you anything that Baker can't. And I think Baker's got a much higher ceiling at this point in his career. Listen, let me give my 2 cents on Baker before we start talking about the Carolina Panthers. I don't hate Baker. Like, I can understand the frustration, because you look at the first 4 years of his productivity, the number of interceptions he's thrown. He's productive. He's got something like 92 touchdowns over the first 4 years of his career. But I feel like this is just an outside perspective. I'm not a Cleveland sports fan. I wasn't watching Baker every single week. But the Browns were 1-31 the year before they drafted him. Those 2 years, they had an 0-16 fucking parade before they had the number 1 pick in the draft. They weren't able to drink beer. They had to open up the Bud Light coolers after they made the playoffs and had a winning season. And then, not only do they get to the playoffs with Baker Mayfield, they play Pittsburgh, the team that has just absolutely mollywopped them for 15 years.
They shellacked
them. And they kicked the shit out of Pittsburgh. Yeah. I mean, they did it on the road, too, if I'm not mistaken. Was it not in Heinz or Acrisure Stadium? Excuse me.
I don't remember.
I don't remember that detail. But at the end of the day, I think Baker got the short end of the stick. And if the Bucs were in a different situation and Tom Brady wasn't here, I wouldn't have minded taking a look at him. But I don't hate Baker Mayfield, and I think he can bring something a little bit exciting to that Carolina offense that Sam Darnold and Teddy Bridgewater just couldn't do.
So, one, he's better than Sam Darnold. And obviously we're not going to talk too much about the Carolina Panthers because Carolina Panthers fans don't even want to talk about the Carolina Panthers. So
It's dominating the news cycle this week, though. I got people all over Twitter telling me that the Panthers are relevant again.
Yeah, I bet. But Baker wasn't good last year. Like that, let's get that out of the way. But he wasn't as bad. That last year's performance wasn't an indicator on how he is as a player. He's better than he was last year. Like
hopefully he's healthier too, because he was playing through some pretty brutal injuries.
Yeah, he's better than what he showed last year. That being said, like, yeah, it's a slight upgrade. Like, I don't know. Like, I mean, it's an upgrade. I think he's better than Sam Darnold, but like, is he your friend? It just feels like the Panthers are just throwing darts at the wall and hoping one of them stick. And they're on like their third or fourth dart now. And I mean, they're trying to sign Cam Newton midseason and playing in a 2-quarterback system. And I mean, they're just throwing everything at the wall and trying to see what sticks. And so far it hasn't stuck at all. And I think Baker will be fine, but like you could have just drafted Justin Fields and been done with it.
It feels like the Colts quarterback carousel these past few years, but like, they're just not as good of a team.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like
also, like the Colts are getting better quarterbacks though. Like
like Phillip Rivers was competent his last year. He got the job done.
Phillip Rivers, it was probably slightly better than Baker, and I think Matt Ryan right now is probably slightly better than.
I think Carson Wentz, shitty system, shitty timing. Yeah. It just didn't work out. They weren't afraid to admit that, but I mean, he still had a better team around him than Baker's going into right now.
Yeah. And the Panthers offensive line, while they were able to get a tackle in Icky in the draft, the offensive line's still a work in progress. The receivers are good, not great. Obviously Christian McCaffrey's a huge weapon, but is he going to be healthy? So, I mean, and I want to bring it back to the Bucs now because that's enough Panthers talk for me. But I do think if Tom Brady stayed retired, and I think our boy Stank might have said this too a little bit earlier, but I think he would have been the Bucs quarterback if Tom Brady didn't come back. I think Baker Mayfield would be the Bucs quarterback right now.
I also agree.
I really do.
I know we're talking about the Bucs, but we are talking about quarterbacks, and let's just call the next 5 to 10 minutes of the show cannon fodder. Because basically what we're going to do is just shut down the BS that's been coming out this week. Dan Sileo decided to open his fat mouth and say that the Buccaneers are definitely going to be trying to trade for Jimmy Garoppolo. And pretty much every major beat reporter in Tampa was like, yeah, that's not going to happen. There was even an anonymous coach that came out and said, if Jimmy G could hit a deep ball, he'd probably have 2 Super Bowls right now. So safe to say that move is not happening. I just want to get that also clarified for anybody who has not heard otherwise. But if you remember Dan Sileo from sucking it up on Tampa Bay radio for the longest time, they call him Silly Dan for a reason, Evan. And it seems like he's still making up reports.
The funny thing is he brought like Tom Brady's agent into it. He was like, yeah, somebody like close to Tom Brady's agent, or Tom Brady's agent told me that, the Bucs are trying to trade for Jimmy Garoppolo. And like, no, like, stop. Like, come on.
It was just some burner email, some guy pretending to be Brady's agent.
Yeah.
Some Boston fan.
Like, okay, just because Bruce Arians isn't there anymore doesn't mean that the offense is going to completely change. It's the same offense. Like, Jimmy Garoppolo would be running the same exact offense, no matter who was, if it was Bruce Arians or Todd Bowles as the head coach. So, like, that doesn't change. And if they weren't interested in him before, what did change, right? So, like, yeah, no, even if Tom Brady stayed retired, like, it wasn't going to be Garoppolo. Like, it wasn't. So, I don't know. I think it's fun because for people to talk about, it's like, oh, Garoppolo is supposed to be Brady's successor, and instead of in New England, it's going to be in Tampa Bay. Yeah, I would be very surprised if Jimmy Garoppolo ended up and right now he's not even 100% healthy. I got a notification during this show that like 2-3 weeks ago, he started throwing because of his shoulder issue. Like, he's not even 100% healthy. So like, and I understand the Bucs aren't, if they were to acquire him, they wouldn't expect him to play, right? You would hope you'd never see him, but yeah, the cap hit that he has, with the limited resources that the Bucs do have, yeah, I don't see it. I don't see that being, like I said, I think the Baker stuff was real. I do think they would have had interest in Baker, legitimate interest in Baker if Tom Brady didn't come back. But the Garoppolo stuff, I think that was more of, oh, Brady was there, so I guess Garoppolo's got to follow in his footsteps there now. And yeah, I wouldn't buy it. So yeah, I don't think we have to be worrying about Jimmy Garoppolo being on the Buccaneers anytime soon.
And as we wrap up our cannon fodder segment, we should also mention the wide receiver position. Odell Beckham Jr. has been named a possibility for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to bring in at wide receiver. But I feel like anyone who knows anything beyond surface level information about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, specifically Chris Godwin, I mean, it doesn't make sense. Like, you know, every single year, every offseason, it seems like you have a couple of big names that are attached to certain teams. The Bucs have been one of those teams that always seems to have big names attached to them, especially when their future seems a little uncertain. But it's important to remember that Odell Beckham Jr. tore his ACL in the Super Bowl in February. Chris Godwin...
Mid-February.
Yeah, based off of reports that we have heard, it seems like the Bucs are a little bit more hopeful than they were 2 weeks ago that Chris Godwin is going to be good to go for week 1, or, you know, any one of those first 4 games of the season would be a huge boost to their confidence, because, you know, a couple of months ago, we were talking about him not being ready until maybe the halfway point of the season. Bucs seem optimistic. Godwin's camp seems optimistic. And bringing in a guy like OBJ, who's not going to be ready until week 7, 8, or 9, just doesn't make any sense. And I also just wanted to take an opportunity to shut that BS down.
I think even later than that, I think you're looking around Thanksgiving that he would be available. So yeah, it doesn't make much sense, especially with positive reports about Godwin. Now, I still don't believe Chris Godwin will play week 1. I do not believe he'll be on the field week 1.
I think he'll be on the field those first 4 weeks of the season, though.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I always thought that it was either going to be week 3 or week 4. I don't think he's going to play those first 2 games regardless. I don't think the Bucs are going to rush him back. They learned their lesson with Gronkowski about rushing people back. Sherman, they rushed back. They rushed him in, and then they rushed him back, and then he got hurt again. Yeah, I don't think they want to do that. So, especially with a key, I mean, he is so important to their offense. They need him to be 100% healthy. So I don't think, if he's not 100%, I don't think he's going to be out there, especially with the depth that they have with Mike Evans now, with Russell Gage. You know, a lot of the other guys, Jalen Darden, they're hoping he takes a step. Tyler Johnson, maybe he takes a step. Scotty Miller, Brashad Perryman came back. So I would be surprised. I would honestly be surprised if they added a receiver regardless, whether that's Odell, whether that's Julio, anybody, any of those names. I would be surprised if they added a receiver, just because I do think they're more confident now that Godwin's going to miss less of the season than originally thought. So I think in that case, I don't expect a receiver coming in, and you know, but I mean, injuries can always happen though. You know, injuries can always happen. And, you know, if, let's say, God forbid, or, you know, Russell Gage goes down and maybe he's in doubt for the first few weeks, then maybe you are looking at maybe a Julio Jones. But if a guy goes down with injury in training camp, you're not looking to replace that guy with Odell, who's not going to be available. So I would be very surprised if the Buccaneers signed a receiver, and I would be even more surprised if they did, it would be Odell. I would just be very surprised.
And I think for the people who bring up Odell for the sake of injuries, because let's face it, the Bucs have depth at wide receiver, but with the injuries last year on offense, especially towards the end of the season, that depth went away pretty quickly. So yeah, hindsight tells you that you could have signed a midseason guy to come in and help out like that, but I think with a player like OBJ in particular, the price tag has to be a factor, because I don't think he's going to come play in Tampa for less than what he thinks he's worth.
Well, no, but also, I mean, you got to think it's for almost not even half the season, though.
Right.
It's not going to be a lot of money.
Yeah, so that's going to affect it. But that's also even more reason why I think he just ends up staying in L.A.
Yeah, like, I think he's not going to sign until like week 8, week 9, week 10, and then he'll sign, and then they'll get him practicing a little bit, and they'll be out there.
Yeah. Well, honestly, I think we've covered the horn. I mean, unless there's some training camp headlines or anything else on your mind, I think we can start wrapping this thing up.
Yeah, not a whole lot. Obviously, there's been a lot of chatter about Leonard Fournette and his weight and everything. I mean, those guys are freaks. Like those guys know they have their diet plans, they have their workout plans. They can lose weight. You know, if it takes us 2-3 months to lose weight, they can lose it in 2-3 weeks. Like, you know, they're built different. Okay. Like, so I don't get worried about now. You show up to training camp, that's different, right? Like if you show up to training camp out of weight.
Yeah, but these are voluntary OTAs.
Yeah. Like, okay. Like you're still a month, almost 2 months away from camp, like whatever. And he looks to be in better shape now. So I think people were overreacting.
He actually posted a picture on his Instagram recently, and the caption said, "No more fat Lenny." So if anybody knows about the criticism, it's going to be Leonard Fournette, and he's probably going to take his job that much more seriously this year with the departure of Ronald Jones. I mean, he is the number one back. There is no question about it. There is no curious people going into training camp this year saying, oh, well, if Jones can produce, blah, 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 he doesn't have to worry about any of that noise this year. He knows that.
Yeah, I mean, but the one battle is Giovanni Bernard versus Rachaad White. It's I've heard a lot.
I know you don't want to mention your other boy in there.
No.
Huh?
No,
what?
You know, to be involved in a pass catching back, to be involved in a pass catching back competition, you actually have to be able to catch the football. I could go out there and catch.
You are Keyshawn Vaughn's biggest hater. You wake up extra early in the morning, so you have more time to be a hater.
I call it like I see it. Okay. I'm sorry. You know,
no, it's okay. I've known that about you, and anybody who has listened to the show since before Tom Brady got here, they know that about you. I remember we've had a lot of conversations on here about like, man, Evan, you know, how come you're so critical of this team? How come you don't ever think the Bucs can win? And you always said it's because, you know, I'll believe it when I see it. And I've noticed that these last few years, luckily, your tune has been able to change. But that's because we've been talking about a much more developed football team than we were this time 3-4 years ago. So I guess just the mediocre play does not fly for the Philly Bucs fan on this team.
No, especially not when you're a Super Bowl contender. Like, you know, if we were a rebuilding team, sure, maybe you do take the time to maybe try and develop Keyshawn Vaughn. But I've heard a lot of things about Rachaad White, like a lot of positive things. And I think he's going to be a good player. I really do. I don't think he's going to be a lead back or anything like that. But like, I think he's going to be a good player. Like I really, really do. And I think at the start of the season, you're going to see a lot of Giovanni Bernard, but I think by mid-season, I don't know how much you're going to see of Giovanni Bernard. I really don't. Because I think Rachaad White's going to take over that like third down pass catching back role. Obviously, unless injuries happen, which you can never predict. But I think if they're all healthy, I think Rachaad White's going to see a lot of playing time about mid-season, you know, especially if in the preseason he looks good with catching the football. You know, like I said, I always worried about Leonard Fournette's hands sort of regressing. He was really, really good last year, but that's not like his career. Like that's not who he's been. So if they regress down to like normal, like average, I think Rachaad White could be a pretty big piece of this offense.
Yeah, I think when you look at the rookie class coming into training camp, Rachaad White is probably the one that it's easiest to get the most excited about. Like, yeah, you've got Logan Hall. That's going to be fun, but I don't think he has the potential to make that much of an impact.
The running back's more flashy.
Right. He's going to be in the end zone, right?
Nobody's talking about Luke Gedeke, you know, and pumped about him, you know. So Tony in the chat, Tony Saylor says, I'm more like Evan than I like to admit. Oh, you know, I think we all.
I think a lot of people are. I don't think they like to give you the benefit of the doubt, but I think when you
they know.
When you peel the onion back and you take a look at what you bring to the table, it might be off-putting for some people, but Evan's always been a straight shooter, and for that we do appreciate him.
Anyway, well, speaking of which, and this is a plug for what's coming in the next few weeks, our season prediction show. You want to talk about me, you know, telling it like it is.
Oh, shit.
What?
Evan's going to be picking them to win 9 games this year, folks. That's what that means.
The schedule, the injuries, it's too much. No, but anyways, the history, if I can pull it up here, the history has shown that when we do our season predictions, I'm pretty good at it. So let me see if I can find it here.
I think we know off the top of our head. Go ahead.
Okay. 2017 was our worst year, by the way. Worst year. Me and you both predicted. Now I've gone back and I've watched the videos and I've put them down. So we each predicted 10-6. They were 5-11. Clearly after that, I was like, forget this.
Yeah, that was the end. That was the end of being hopeful.
2018, Rhett 10-6. I predicted 8-8 and they were 5-11 again. After that, I said, no way. So 2019, you said 9-7. I predicted 7-9. They were 7-9. 2020, we both predicted 11-5, and they were 11-5. 2021, I think you predicted 13-4, but I don't have anything down here. But I did. I predicted 13-4, and they were 13-4.
We both had 13-4. We just had different games.
Yeah, I'm now trying to go for 4 straight years of predicting the exact Bucs record. So how about
a lot on the table?
There's a lot on the table, and it's difficult this year. I've been going back and forth. I've been looking at it. I'm like, oh, this is gonna be a tough one. I think this year, out of the most years, we're gonna have the most like different wins and losses.
Yeah, I think so. This is the most stacked schedule that we've ever had to sit here and break down. Like, let's face it. You know, the schedule that the Bucs have this year is nothing to sneeze at. It's gonna be a tough set of home games, some pretty tough road games mixed in there as well. But it should be a lot of fun. Be on the lookout for our season prediction show. We'll keep you posted when that's going to be coming up. And before we wrap things up officially, we do have one more thing we should mention. Still don't know what your fantasy football punishment is going to be, but it's going to happen sooner than you think it is.
It has to happen sooner rather than later.
It's going to happen. If you guys are in the live chat here in the last few minutes,
if anybody's got any ideas.
Yeah, we need a punishment for Evan finishing dead last in the Cannon Fire Fantasy League last year.
2 years ago, Rhett finished last, and his punishment was he had to shave his beard and just leave the mustache. And which, I mean, it doesn't sound too crazy of a punishment, but you got to realize he hasn't shaved his beard since like high school. So it was a long time.
You can actually go back. It was pretty much my COVID stash. Like, COVID had just started. I think it was March 2020 or April 2020. You can go back to the shows during that period, and yeah, it was just the mustache. This chin wasn't looking quite as strong over there on the video, but that's all right. I'll leave that open for you to go find it. But Evan, before we wrap this thing up, do you have a grab bag this week? I know it's kind of putting you on the spot here, but anything pressing that maybe we could carry into the next podcast?
No, I mean, obviously, I got it right here. I got the take bag, and I guess my one take is that I'm starting to get the little itch. I'm starting to get the itch that maybe the same one that Gronkowski's gonna get. I don't know, but I'm starting to get the itch to just watch like real football. Like, I'm starting to get the itch to like watch like real football that's like not like replays. Like, I'm starting to get that itch. Not just the Bucs, just like the NFL in general. Just like I'm starting. Like, I always look forward to the Hall of Fame game, and then 5 minutes in, you're like, okay, this kind of sucks.
This is terrible. But just the pomp and circumstance of it all, I guess. Like the the way that they just present everything. Football being back. Usually that stadium is packed. I know it's not the biggest stadium in the world, but seeing football players on a field with people in the stands is such a welcome sight, and I'm ready for it. I am ready for it.
Joel Enrican in the chat says Ghost Pepper Chip Challenge. Clearly he wants me to die.
Oh, that's a good one though. That is a good one. We can make some good content out of that. We'll do it at the beginning of the show, and then we'll do a podcast while you recover.
Better expect to do the podcast alone then at the beginning of the show. I'll be sitting here in tears.
We'll make sure we get James on for that one. But ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for checking out this episode of the Cannon Fire Podcast. That's the show. Check us out over on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. All of those are Cannon Fire Podcast. Best place to go for updates on the show. And, of course, Buccaneer news as it happens. Speaking of Bucs news as it happens, you can follow my co-host Evan on Instagram at Bucs_daily. You can also find him on Twitter at EvanNFL and check out his written work at BucsNation.com. You got anything cooking this week?
No, not really. I might have something on the wide receiver room coming up. Maybe like who's going to be the odd man out there, because it feels like somebody's going to have to be. Don't know, but it's there's not a lot to talk about, so I can't really tell you. If I don't plan it now, it's just if it comes to me, I write it. So we'll see what happens.
Last but not least, you can find myself, Instagram and Twitter at Rhettakus, RHETT, If you follow me, I will follow you back. Cannon Fire Podcast is back, folks. We are going to continue our regular coverage. With that being said, we'll catch you next week as we continue our countdown to training camp for the 2022 season. Get excited. Football is almost here. I am your host, Rhett Matthew, signing off from my co-host, Evan Wanish. We'll talk to you in the next one. Until then, and as always, go Bucs.